Salutations, hello, greetings. What is going on, you guys? It's truly Master Sakurai here. If you hear anything in the background, it's just my air conditioner. It's hot as hell in my room. So that's the reason why you guys hear that. If it's not that, then just don't worry about it. All right. I mean, if it's not that, I mean, if you hear that, just don't worry about it. That's literally what it is. It's just hot as crap in my room. I swear this room gets hot as hell in the summer and cold as hell in the winter. Of course, I do have a radiator back here, but hey, still, you know. Anyway, it's time to get back to these reaction requests. They've been building up as of late because I took some time to hang out with friends and unwind my shit and all this other stuff. Read comments. A lot of y'all regarding Beast Morphers. A lot of y'all regarding some of the things that the videos that I've done. Listening to people, experts of critiquing, you know, so-called experts with critiquing videos and background sounds and all this other shit. Whatever. This one is one that I've been thinking of. I've been wanting to do for a while now, because ever since I saw it in the reaction requests. This is about Digimon. Yes, finally we're going to be talking about the Digimon yet again. Alright? And y'all know what I said about Digimon when I was watching when I was growing up. I had watched the dub and I loved it. I wasn't those people who all of a sudden I watched the the English sub and it was like, oh my god, why didn't they just do this? This is so much better. No. I'm still OG the English dub, because if it wasn't for the English dub, we wouldn't know shit about this, about any of these Japanese cartoons. You know what I'm saying? We wouldn't know anything about that, about the Japanese anime. We wouldn't at all. They hadn't made that, but someone made this. Was the Digimon dub better than you remember? Because a lot of people saying that like it was so horrible. Looking back at it now, it was so horrible, and because the English translation was just fucking terrible, how they sounded. I'm just like, you didn't care about that when we was watching this. I don't know why you bitching about it now. But anyway, let's just look at it in another form, in another sense. Flip the coin. See what somebody else has to say about it. Alright, here we go.
As a kid born in the early 90s, my first experiences with anime were pretty much defined by the era of hack dubs. Like we mentioned in a previous video, these were the end results of Western companies heavily editing and repurposing a foreign property for the sake of making it appeal to a young Western audience. Most of the time, the purpose of these dubs wasn't so much to preserve a show's original message for a non-Japanese audience, as much as it was to generate a brand that could be used as a means to facilitate merchandise. Saban Entertainment were no strangers to repurposing foreign media for marketing purposes, especially before the turn of the century when those practices were arguably the standard for localization. However, while that frame of reference might serve to explain some of the arguably dated anime dubs that were produced at the time, this reality can serve to make something like Saban's English adaptation of the original Digimon adventures stand out for the exact opposite reasons. After reaching out to Jeff Nimoy, the English voice of Tentamon as well as one of the episode writers and story editors for the first two adventure seasons, he clarified that, as was the case with many shows airing on network television, there was a tight policing on what Digimon was and wasn't allowed to show.
Really?
Even today, nothing goes on air without lawyers, producers, and a Department of Broadcast Standards and Practices seeing it first. Back then, there was a stronger stigma against repeatable behaviors, or scenes which display dangerous actions children could imitate. These scenes included handling dangerous objects, acts of violence, or substance abuse. And this was maybe most evident with any scene involving alcohol, as the staff had to get creative coming up with other interesting ways to show characters hitting the sauce.
いやー、見つかってしまいましたか。何？こちらの世界は思ったより楽しくて、つい酔っ払ってしまったんです。
All right, but if I show you, you have to promise not to tell anyone.
Come on, show me!
All right, it's a bottle of green chili sauce. It's great on tacos.
However, the Digimon dub didn't actually
That's
have
not
much in the
bad.
way of removed scenes or cut footage, and when it
Well, honestly, listen. That's understandable. It's not that's not anything that's groundbreakingly terrible. Because why would I say this before, and I will always say this: Japanese kids are way different than American children. Japanese children are way different than American children. Their economy and how they look at life is completely different than the way it is looked at over here. So you cannot expect for us to just take the same medium with a lot of these shows and bring it over here without having anything change, because these parents, these Karens, these overbearing people who care so much about what children watch are the reason why these things are happening. It's not because they think we're babies, it's because these parents, these whiny Mr. Rogers having ass parents, after school shit ass parents, don't really want to parent their children, so they make sure that that these television companies do their work for them on how to parent the children, and actually censor some things so that they won't know what the reality of life is at a young age. Whereas compared to people in over Japan, they can still have that, and their parents will tell them, well, yes, this is alcohol and that, but you are not old enough to do that, so don't repeat what you see on TV. That's literally them and how they do that. That's why their economy is a little better than ours. It's a lot better than ours, because they actually parent their kids. Whereas to us, they just you see it now. They give you a tablet, right? Give you a tablet or a phone and make you shut the hell up. And then or back when I was a kid, watch the TV, and if it's anything that was remotely terrible or that we shouldn't be seeing, they wouldn't parent us. They would go over there and complain to these TV networks. That's how it is. That's how they've always done it. You see these videos about these parents bitching about what they see on YouTube videos. Just like if you understand the policy, you would know that your kid, if he's not old enough to watch YouTube, he shouldn't be watching that YouTube stuff. There's literally a category for kids to watch stuff on YouTube, but parents are being lazy, right? Being lazy and not really focusing on what their kids are watching. They bitch at the companies rather than parent their kids. So that's why that's happening. That's mainly the reason why we had that for it to be dubbed over here in America, because parents don't want to really tell their children the truth and what's going on, and tell them to not do these things. They just think, oh well, this is just what they're supposed to do. No, bitch, parent your kids. Parent your fucking kids.
When it did, they were almost always kept at a minimum, such as quick cuts of characters' fists actually making contact with each other without completely omitting the fact that two characters were fighting.
Right!
According to Mr. Nimoy, time was a factor that needed to be considered because you could only cut so much and still wind up at 22 minutes worth of animated footage. The standard Western running time without commercials, especially since some scenes already needed to be cut to fit Western commercial breaks. So when something deemed unsuitable for broadcast was too long to cut, sometimes the staff had to make the story work by dubbing over it as something else.
And then there's the other thing about the commercials. Our commercials are way longer than it is over in Japan. In Japan, that commercial is like 10 to 20 seconds. I'm not even joking with you. They actually do it at least 10 to 20 seconds. Where you see these commercials we got, it's at least 30 to 40 seconds to a minute. I'm just like, why are our commercials longer? They are so longer. Whereas go over in Japan, it's fast as shit. For anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, go and watch a Japanese commercial. I kid you not, it's fast as hell. It will tell you something within what you need to know within 20 to 30 seconds. tops. 30 seconds tops. And if it's longer, then it's rare, because I've never seen a Japanese commercial that's long as hell like that. That's at least a minute long. Never.
For example, in episode 30, the main characters spend a few minutes attempting to hitchhike a ride from strangers, which could be deemed as behavior that most American parents wouldn't want their kids to repeat. So instead, their dialogue was changed to looking for a taxi or trying to get the attention of a police car. Actions that still lend themselves to the footage presented on screen without much deviation from what the characters are hoping to accomplish.
The police? That's his brilliant idea?
In the original version, the kids do actually get picked up by a random stranger who only stops because he takes a liking to the girls in the group, which was of course reworked so that the man was actually Sora's cousin. Aside from snippets of the characters holding up their thumbs, the only part of this segment that was noticeably cut was the scene right before them getting picked up, where Matt tries calling a ride, only for a grown woman to pull up and seduce him to get in the car. Bear in mind that not a single one of these kids is older than 11 years old.
Jesus.
Not so easy, is it, Matt? Well, at least my cat's not stuck in a tree.
But outside of similar moments of explicit material, the ADR staff had a large hand in what to cut to fit their story, and hardly ever seemed to abuse it. In fact, there appeared to be an active, conscious push to show that the series could find an audience with younger viewers without completely changing it into something that it clearly wasn't supposed to be. The Western insert song replacement for Ultimate Digivolution, titled Hey Digimon, sets us up with the overall premise. 7 young friends go to camp for the summer and wind up living in a digital land. But the baggage they carry with them throughout their whole journey could come off as more relatable than anything other localized anime dared to even acknowledge at the time. While it's true that every main character in the series can be defined by a dominant character trait, which easily fit them into stereotypes that kids could find appealing, not only did the show embrace them almost unapologetically, but it even found the time to show that at least some of those traits could be grounded in relatable real-world issues.
Yeah.
I kept saying TK needed me, but really, I was the one who needed him. What do you mean?
Matt wasn't just the typical moody lone wolf rival. He was a child of divorce, actively trying to act cool so he could be seen as strong and reliable to his younger brother. Whenever he clashed with Tai, who aligned himself more with the typical hot-headed shonen protagonist, it almost always felt more like an outlet for dealing with an ever-growing inferiority complex than it ever was just a petty rivalry.
I simply can't understand this preoccupation with who you are. Is there some kind of deep, dark secret in your origins? Oh, well?
Izzy wasn't just a socially awkward computer nerd.
He went
was
through
a
some
kid who
shit.
discovered he was actually adopted at an early age and
Yeah.
had to come to terms with how he felt about his parents
Yeah.
after discovering that they had been hiding this fact from him. While we've seen what heavily bogging down, viscerally violent subject matter had done to shows like One Piece when they were first localized, we shouldn't forget that difficult real-world living situations were also commonly cut or altered. Granted, tiptoeing around Joey Wheeler's family situation in Yu-Gi-Oh! Or tweaking Chun-Li's alcoholic father in GX might not have affected the main overarching narratives of those shows. However, while troubled family backstories and personal self-reflection sound minor in a story where the end of the world is constantly at stake, the main characters need to come to terms with those insecurities and fears in order for their Digimon partners to get stronger. Removing or replacing this context with something less intense would not only cause the very impetus for story progression to change, which could bleed into every other aspect of the show's localization, kind of like what ironically happened with One Piece, but when you're given that additional context, it could arguably make these characters feel more like real people.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks that he's always perfect, but that's too much to expect of him. We've got to give him some freedom to become his own man. You know, he's got to make mistakes. That's part of what it is to be a kid. Don't you think so?
As fun and imaginative as it could be, Digimon wasn't just a silly power fantasy without consequences.
Right.
Force or push that growth artificially, and the show will make it an active point to remind you just how much worse things could end up. As long as something dangerous wasn't literally shoved on the screen, then the staff seemed to think that there was no reason to remove these important moments of character introspection. And in hindsight, maybe drawing the line there explains how the series was able to keep its cultural roots, not hiding the fact that the story took place in Japan and keeping the cast canonically Japanese.
I didn't really care when you know, it was like, you know, that people will always say this. Back then, we didn't really give a damn about that. I didn't care that it was showing Japanese text in there. I wasn't even focused on that. I was focused on the story and where the Digidestined were going or what was going to happen next to them. I wasn't worried about all of this other stuff. The fact that that it's still right there as of today is I think it's cool. I think it's cool. I never had a problem with it. For those who really had a problem with that, then y'all just cannot really live as well as y'all say y'all want to, because you let little stuff like this bother you. That doesn't bother me. I was watching this show simply because I like the story and the characters and the fact that there's a digital monster walking around that I could be a friend with and all this other stuff. Like, especially the story, but everything about the what was it, the seventh or the about the eighth child being being freaking Ty's little sister. Like, come on. I was more interested in that than these little bits.
Something that was exceptionally rare for anime that was localized during the 90s. Japanese text wasn't edited out, Japanese cities were regularly called by their proper names, and while a few of the characters' names themselves were changed, these acted almost more like suggestions rather than full-on replacements. Characters like Tai, Matt, and Izzy had their names abbreviated into nicknames, but in the first episode you see their full Japanese name display.
Yeah.
Granted, I have no idea why Tai's surname was changed into a completely different one that was still Japanese, but I digress. I'm aware none of this may sound impressive or surprising by today's standards, where Japanese studios are more protective of their properties' overseas identities, and most dubbing companies do everything they can to preserve the spirit of the original material. But I think sometimes we get so caught up in the dated cheesiness and puns of days long past that it's easy to forget just how seriously something like Digimon was trying to treat its younger audience. Maybe the reason why Digimon still has a place in the hearts of so many Western anime fans is because the English version of those characters still showed us that we weren't alone going through similar struggles.
Exactly.
And that sometimes relying on others to help you come to terms with those situations isn't such a bad idea.
Tell him again. Tell him again.
Ever since then, I've been alone. I figured if my family didn't want me, then I would just keep to myself and never tell anyone what I was feeling. And I swore I would never let anyone see me cry. But really, all I wanted to do was cry.
This is not a novel concept by any means, especially for children's programming, and the dub will go out of its way to constantly beat that message over your head with as much additional off-screen dialogue as possible. But building that message as the solution to feelings that can, at times, even be hard to explain to adults shouldn't be downplayed.
I pretended to myself I hadn't heard anything. Then I made believe I'd misunderstood. Then I tried to wipe it from my mind and just act like everything was the same as before. But it wasn't, and I didn't mean to, but I just started drifting away from you a little more each day.
I wonder if there were any kids who were going through similar issues at home or in their social circles that ended up seeing a little of themselves in these characters. And if you didn't end up relating to them back then, maybe you'd find yourself relating to them now.
I've got to be the cautious one around here.
I can firmly say that as a kid, my least favorite character was Joe Keto, because compared to everyone else, he was this neurotic pessimist who didn't know how to have fun. But now I see the pressure he tried carrying to look after everyone and why he's seen as the most reliable of the group. Sora feeling depressed despite so many people looking up to her because she thinks she's not worthy of being loved is a state of mind that I still struggle with to this day in my late 20s. And even TK, the youngest character in the show, has to confront the fact that his friend dies in front of him.
Literally, seriously. I like no one out. Oh my god. Oh my god, because seriously, that was the most craziest thing about it. He, like, for the rest of that whole season, he had to literally come to terms with the fact that Patamon, when he finally digivolved, he fucking died in front of TK. He literally sacrificed himself so that the other group can move along. Well, not necessarily die, but just be recreated again. Because that's literally what happened. But he literally thought that Patamon died. He literally thought that he was gone forever. In that moment. Imagine seeing your friend be just obliterated right in front of you. Like, Come on. And then the whole thing with Wizardmon, like that, when I watched that for the first time, that broke me. I was like, what? Why did Wizardmon secretly had Gatomon's back the whole time she was getting abused by Myotismon? And right when it was time for her to go with Kari and go be with the other Digidestined because she realized who she was finally, Wizardmon sacrifices himself because Myotismon was getting ready to kill her. Like, oh god, I gotta watch the series again. I have to watch it again.
This was arguably circumvented by the fact that Digimon reincarnate, but when they do die, it's treated as a legitimate death with a lot of emotional weight.
Yes.
I don't have any regrets. If I hadn't met you, my life would have had no meaning. I'm glad that you and I were friends.
I can only speculate as to why Digimon was handled in such a way, but even allusions to ghosts and other religious symbols were usually preserved, despite that still being a touchy subject for so many properties across different platforms of entertainment. It's possible the writing staff had an idea of what kids could handle and trusted that they could understand what they were supposed to take away from the series. Despite acts of violence being edited out, the context of those actions remained. Kids still fought over not understanding each other's feelings even if we never actually saw a single punch connect. And the physical, emotional scars left by our villains were still exposed even if we didn't get to see exactly how they were inflicted. We were given an idea of what evil people were capable of, and this might have been kept in because it's an important thing for children to distinguish at a young age. Not only did that help reinforce our desire to see the villains get taken out by the good guys that we could relate to, but it also helped give kids a proper frame of reference regarding what a bad person in the real world might actually do.
Right.
Given the show's success, that might have set the standard moving forward as subsequent seasons would handle even darker subject matters. Tamers is still beloved by Western anime fans to this day, specifically because we were allowed to see how dark it could possibly get. But even in Season 2 of Adventures, coming to terms with feeling responsible for the death of others was still a very prominent thematic beat.
Right.
Not again! Wormmon's gone, just like my brother. I was helpless to save him, and now I can't save Wormmon either!
Granted, that desire to maintain as much as possible didn't always work, as sometimes those aforementioned expectations of the era will get in the way of the dub's ability to communicate these ideas as effectively as the original version. Digimon still had its entire soundtrack replaced with music that felt like it had its fingers firmly on the pulse of what was popular in America at the time, with silly, triumphant sounding horns blasting in the background, as if the producers were terrified that any moment of silence would run the risk of boring any children watching. Episode editing might have been limited, but everything can still feel rushed, leaving very little room to breathe when paired with so much of that extra aforementioned off-screen dialogue. I respect the writing team for properly adapting as much of the show's humor as they could, because sometimes those supposed moments of tonal whiplash were carried over from the original series.
Right.
But while there were moments where proper workarounds were found for more Japan-centered references, others can still come off as incredibly awkward.
Bakuman, lose your power. Bakuman, lose your power. Bakuman, lose your power.
Plus, we can't just ignore the various jokes and puns that were crammed into almost every other scene to help make the show carry an overall lighter tone than what...
Hey, I didn't mind the jokes. I'm sorry, but call me crazy, I did not mind the jokes. I didn't mind the music in that. So to me, it added the tone for what was going to happen. Sure, if that scene was supposed to be a silent scene, then okay, fine. But looking back at it now, I have no problem rewatching this again. Absolutely none. I don't mind that at all. When I tell you that I love this season Digimon and the second season, I love them. Especially the third season. Third season is highly loved. Fourth season, I love the fourth season. I love all of those seasons. I don't have a problem with any of them at all. At all. Seriously.
could be found in the original.
Hey, Dad, are we there yet? Sorry, I just had to say that.
However, if anything had to be cut or altered in Digimon, I'm glad it wasn't its heart. Throughout almost every season, Digimon as a franchise showed us that you don't always have to have the literal weight of the world on your shoulders for life to feel daunting and confusing. In fact, it's almost never going to stop feeling that way even as we get older.
Right.
When you put your trust in the right people who can help you find something in yourself nobody else might have, then that's when you have the potential to grow stronger and rise to the challenges that lie ahead. After all, Digimon weren't the only ones who could evolve and change their forms into something special and new. Regardless of how the franchise is seen now, imagine what would have happened if so much of these details weren't preserved. Would so many Western fans facilitate a rapport so deep that it would continue to span generations? There's still so much about the Digimon dubs that I don't know about, and I would love to do a follow-up in the future that answers some of these questions, should the opportunity present itself. But for now, I think it's enough to simply look back, respect the fact that there were so many people working on this show who treated us kids with a little respect,
Yes.
and smile.
Yes.
After being reminded that even now, us Digidestined were never alone.
In memory of Michael Linsday and Robert Axelrod.
So a few special thank yous are in order. Firstly, to Jeff Nimoy for proofreading parts of this script and answering my questions so I could have a better understanding of what the dub's production was like. As well as to Marissa Lenti for helping me go over noteworthy examples, proofreading, and just being an amazing Digimon fan who helped inspire this video. Finally, thank you to everyone tuning into this and to our patrons for supporting this channel, including Marissa Lenti, Reagan Senpai, Seth Phillips, JR Pictures, Spartacus, and Unknown Secret 1000.
My overall saying, I will literally watch the American dub of Digimon again because I love it. I loved it that much. Yes, I know the new Digimon series is out. I get that. Whatever. Okay? But they're gonna be, but they evolve into their mega forms. I get that. Okay? I've seen it. But the new English sub is way better. Shut up. Just be quiet. Okay? Understand this now. If y'all don't give respect to what y'all grew up with in the first place, and then and just abandon what you grew up with just because something new is on the horizon, y'all really need to just look at yourselves real quick. Seriously. Because it's not like looking at this or admitting the fact that this show was good is going to make you any less of a fan or any less of a true, like, I say this before, I'll say it again. The only person that is calling us, not a true fan is ourselves. That's literally what it is. We came up with that. Not the writers, not the people who made this show or this concept. It's us that did that to ourselves. So instead of looking at it like that, why don't you take yourself out of the equation and appreciate what you watched when you were growing up? Because had it not been for that, had it not been for the love that this show got, we wouldn't be getting Digimon right now. I want y'all to think about that shit. If it had not been for the love from Japan and America for this show, for these 4 seasons of Digimon, we wouldn't be getting it. Just please understand that right now. I want y'all to grasp that concept. Seriously. We would not be getting anything Digimon. Anything. You see how long it took for Metabots to start coming around again? I'm just hearing about Metabots coming back around. And I swear to God that they don't bring it over to America, I'm going to be pissed. Then again, it's probably okay if they just keep it over in Japan because it might not be as good as I want it to be when it comes over to America. But that's only because of nostalgia. Still, come on. Let me know what y'all think about this. Seriously, let me know what y'all think about this. I want to hear what y'all have to say. I do. Even though the fact that I just said, if you're saying that, well, the new stuff is better. Tell me. Because I was really just saying that just because I was getting upset, getting a little bit perturbed, because a lot of people like to do that when other people look at stuff and they feel as though they're like the master library or the master expert of what is good and what's bad or what's terrible or what's better, you know, that whole stick that I get tired of seeing. But yeah, post your comments down below. Like, comment, subscribe. This has been Master of Sakurai. I will see y'all again in the next video. I'm out. Peace.